All right, good afternoon, everyone. We are going to give this a few seconds to make sure that we are live and good to go. We will be streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn today. Matt, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about this for a little while, so glad we
We
finally
have
got one
talked
going.
about this for a little bit, so I'm excited that we finally get to do this together. I think it'll be a good one.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, it feels like a pretty relevant topic right now for a lot of people, and it kind of encompasses quite a bit that we've talked about over the last 6 or 7 months, especially with a lot of the Careerwell topics kind of being at the forefront. So.
Yeah, I think so too. Full circle moment for sure from when we started Careerwell till now.
Yeah.
So we're going to give it a couple more seconds just to make sure that we are live and you guys can hear us. So hang tight. Give a few more moments for folks to straggle in and join us if they feel like it.
Absolutely.
All right. Matt, any plans for this weekend?
No, actually, I don't think so. Mostly just yard work. I think we've got a little bit of stuff to knock out before we actually get into fall. We've got this last little bit of nice weather we've got. So outside of catching the Bears tonight, nothing planned for the weekend.
Bear down.
Yeah, maybe this will be the first time the Bears beat Tom Brady ever in Tom Brady's career.
Maybe. Well, we just got the go live notification, so we should be good to go. So good afternoon to LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. If you aren't familiar with me by now, my name is Ryan Brown. I'm a lead recruiter here at Hiatus and an advisor at Careerwell. And today I am joined with my friend and colleague, Matt Tokarz, who is also a lead recruiter at Hiatus and advisor at Careerwell. Matt, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to jump on and give James a break for a minute.
It's either James or me that needs a break. One of us does. But anyway, I'm super excited about today because Matt and I have been trying to nail down a time to do a podcast together for quite some time. And now is finally the time. We made it work. We've cleared our schedules and we are good to go. But I'm super excited about today's topic because it's going to be super relatable for a ton of folks, I think, especially this year. So today, we really want to dive into returnships and how to best position yourself to restart and jumpstart your career again. So whether it's been 6 months or 6 weeks since you've last worked, any extended period of time outside of work can be challenging to return. You're bound to be asked questions about what you've been doing since your last role, why you're looking for a new one. And in 2020, this is a really common reality. So it's important to arm yourself and be ready to jumpstart into a new position and move forward. So Matt is going to be our subject matter expert on all of that today and give us all tips and tricks on how to get things going. So Matt, let's jump into it. What do you say?
Yeah, no, I mean, like you mentioned, right now, especially 2020 has been a pretty challenging year for a lot of people, whether they were looking to jump back in at the beginning of the year or found themselves in a search, once spring kicked off. It's certainly been difficult for a lot of individuals. And, whether it's been, a couple weeks or it's been a couple years, like a lot of employers see a gap on a resume and almost always have an inherent bias and want to have an understanding as to why that is. So typically when I'm talking to people, if they're looking to jump into something new, the first thing you should do is to kind of take a step back and be able to speak about what you've been doing or why you've been on that break. Right now, obviously, COVID is a situation a lot of us are dealing with, and that's something that a lot of employers understand too. So it's a pretty easy one to be able to discuss. Alternatively, if it's been a year and a half and you took some time off, maybe you had a kid and you wanted to spend some time with them, or you traveled the world and you just did some freelance stuff. Like there's a lot of different things, and the first thing I tell people is just be able to talk to it. Own it. It is what it is, and if for whatever personal or professional reason that it is, like just be able to articulate why you did that or why you're in that spot, and be honest about it.
Yeah, that's a great point, Matt. I think like this is the time where people, like, especially if you're considering going back to work, right, or restarting your career, whatever it may be, like this is the time for you to really like come up with that narrative, so to speak. But really, it's a truth. It's there's a ton of reasons why you decided to go a certain way with the direction of your life and maybe how that impacted things professionally, or in a year like we're experiencing now. you and everyone else are kind of dealing with the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's important to have that answer, to be able to kind of speak to it, but then also really use this time as you're looking to really nail down what it is you're looking for, why you're looking to get back in. Are you looking to is it money motivated? Sometimes it is. Are you looking to pivot into a specific industry, a particular career, or is it the role itself that's really interesting to you? Being able to speak to that is going to be inherently important, especially as you're talking to recruiters or the initial kind of HR contact within an organization. Like, they want to know the why behind what's going on, and why you're interested in that particular role. And much like we've discussed before, I mean, having an understanding of the role of the industry, doing your research on that is going to be important, and being able to speak to it coherently is obviously going to be really key. So with that, I mean, it's really important to craft your narrative, kind of know yourself, but understand that you're kind of inherently in a position that might be a step or two behind other candidates that are looking right now. If they're employed or they're recently unemployed, and you have that gap, like, it's important to be able to kind of speak to what you do know, and understand your weaknesses, or be able to prepare for some of those difficult questions that might come up. Oftentimes when software professionals have been out of it for a little bit, like, hiring managers are going to ask, are you up to date on the current trends? Are you up to date on the newest software, or the newest release? Like, are you able to look at this version versus this version and be able to differentiate, because we're here and we need to get here. So being able to kind of speak to what you know versus what you don't, and what you can get up to speed on, I think is super important. And again, just really have those answers for questions that are inevitably going to come up. It's whether it's appropriate or not, there's going to be that bias that you're going to have to overcome. So, the first and foremost, it's really understanding yourself, where you're at, your situation and your skills, and then, being able to speak to them, fluidly as best as possible.
That's great. So once folks have kind of set this realistic expectation for themselves, so to speak, and kind of understood where they're at and decided how they want to vocalize that or share that story with hiring managers, recruiters, whoever it may be, what should they focus on next?
So from there, it's really, so you kind of understand where you're at. From there, it's building yourself up. And we've talked at length about building your resume, building your LinkedIn profile, your online presence, for example. Like, you really want to be able to speak to those skills and make sure that they're apparent for everybody. Whether it's a hiring manager that's looking through a resume, you want to make sure that you're picking out the right things for that opportunity. They want to make sure that you can deliver on what you've set forward. So having as James likes to say, data-driven examples.
I knew it was going to come. I was waiting for it
before 10 minutes. Having data to back up what you've achieved so far in your career, I think is obviously important. And having experience that you can reference that showcases those wins, especially if it's not everything that you're going to be looking at is always going to draw parallels one-to-one. So being able to show why this is important and how you can relay that information here, I think is also really really helpful. So I know I've had a lot of conversations with professionals that have wanted to pivot careers out of accounting into marketing, and how they can do that too. And there's a lot of similarities with that as well. But first and foremost, it's really about building your profile to show what you have achieved, and to draw parallels about what you can achieve moving ahead. I think that's really important, and really relevant, depending on the types of jobs that you're looking for. In addition to being targeted around what you're looking at, and tailoring some of that experience to that as well.
Yeah, those are great points. I do want to point out really quickly that Careerwell does have several of these areas highlighted on our website. So if you are somebody that's looking to build your resume, to take a look at it, we do have some information on the Careerwell website that you can check out for that. Speaking of building your online presence, James and myself did an Optimizing Your LinkedIn webinar a few months ago. I'd be happy to link it in the comments below. But those are all things that you have to think about, especially when you're trying to jumpstart your career. You have to have all your ducks in a row. Make sure that the content that you're putting out there, whether it's your resume or your LinkedIn, is up to par, and you're making the needed edits and aligning yourself the best way that you can.
Yeah, and I think kind of following up off of that, and not to give away too much from your guys' insight before, but
Sure.
like making sure that you have the answers to questions before people can ask them. I feel like is the most important thing right now.
Mhm.
Really understanding what people are targeting, what they're looking for, and having different pieces of yourself that you can share with other people. I think gone are the days where people have one resume that they send. I
Mhm.
think a lot of times people, and
Great
if they
point.
don't, they should,
Yeah.
tailor resumes to the types of positions that they're applying for.
Mhm.
So, whether that's having, something specifically for a particular role in a particular company or
Mhm.
just a subset of roles, I think it's important to relay that experience the correct
Totally.
way.
Yeah, that's a great point. We actually just got a question that I want to read out loud really quickly,
Mhm.
and get your opinion on this, Matt. So someone asked, if I mentioned to the recruiting team that I was laid off during COVID, does it negatively affect my capabilities? Should I even mention this? What are your thoughts?
That's a good question. I don't think it reflects negatively right now with
Agreed.
tens of millions unemployed right now. I don't think they can point at you and be like, well, clearly you were not good at
This
your job.
wasn't performance based, right?
No, and with a lot of organizations having to furlough and lay
Hmm.
individuals off, whether they want to or not, you've seen an
Hmm.
influx of people that are fantastic at what they do that have been impacted.
Right.
So I think it goes back to really owning your story and just saying, this is what happened. We laid off 20% of the workforce, and I was
Hmm.
unfortunately part of it. Maybe I was new to the organization. Maybe there was, too many people like me, and that was what it was. I don't think it reflects negatively. I think it's a reflection of the times right now,
Right.
unfortunately.
Hmm.
And yeah, I would mention it personally
Yeah,
because,
I agree.
again, it gives people answers to questions that they haven't yet asked. And that's always a good thing. You want to
Yeah.
have insight and answers for people so that they're not wondering and attaching
Hmm.
their own inherent bias or, answers to questions they don't know the answer to.
Totally. I think a good point too is like thinking about previous recessions in our economy where folks have been impacted by layoffs. A lot of hiring managers or recruiters are aware of when those times happen and can kind of piece together on
Mhm.
their own what, in terms of timing, if maybe you were a part of something like that or impacted by it. And they may bring it up themselves and be like, hey, was this something that happened? And if it is, like, I think there's a lot of understanding that goes across the board there. And I guess I would ask folks too is, if you're interviewing at an organization and they're not understanding of something like that, like, is that a place that you even want to work? So keeping that stuff in mind. But again, I think from both Matt and my perspectives, that it shouldn't be something that negatively impacts or reflects on your capabilities.
The
So,
other thing
oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I
No,
was just
go
gonna
for
say,
it.
just kind of following up too, like on making sure that you're building yourself up. The other important thing is like if you have this downtime right now, make sure that whether or not a position requires it, have a portfolio of work you could share,
Mhm.
have examples outside of just a resume that you can share with teams, and really take this time to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward. I remember, maybe last year or so when somebody had been out of work for 3 to 5 months, like then questions would get raised. So, well, what are they
Mhm.
doing? Why aren't they working? Well,
Mhm.
now it's a little bit more common, but the same rules still apply in terms of making sure that you're still trying to better yourself, if at all
Mhm.
possible, whether that's through, certifications or online webinars right now, because there's not a lot of conferences for professional
Mhm.
growth, but or just the freelancer side hustles that you're working on. It shows that you're not just sitting on your couch watching Netflix. It shows that you're
Well, you are
actively
doing that a little bit. Just
a,
kidding.
a little bit. There's always a little bit about that, but the fact is you're working towards bettering yourself or trying to, and growing in different ways, and that's important.
Yeah.
That's going to be a lot of what people are looking for, and unfortunately, with people being forced into more lean teams right now, they have to wear different hats, and being able to
Mhm.
articulate that experience and that ability, I think has been more important now than ever.
Yeah, that's a good point, Matt. I think like the professional development piece could be really key right now, right? Like, are there certain certifications that could help you advance in your career? If so, and you don't have those, now is a great time to look into taking the courses necessary, getting certified in X, Y, and Z. Attending the conferences that Matt had mentioned, and just really making sure that you're aligning yourself and preparing the best way you can to move forward when it is time for you to get back to work.
Mhm.
So far we've covered setting realistic expectations, showcasing your skills, and continuing professional development. What else do you think is important for folks to keep in mind as they're starting to prepare for their job search?
And we've talked a little bit about some of these as well, but I think they're even more relevant here. I mean, I think the first thing you want to do, especially if you've taken time off yourself, is just kind of network. Like, don't be afraid to tell people, hey, like I'm starting to look now. Maybe you took 2 years off to make sure that you're taking care of somebody that was sick, or you had a newborn at home and you wanted to make sure that you're there for some of their formative years. I've got 2 little ones sleeping upstairs that hopefully aren't going to be super loud here in a minute. But I think alerting your network that you're ready to jump back in, or that you are looking, is really important. And you don't have to say, hey, like, get me a job. You can say, hey, like, I'm just so you know, I'm starting to jump back in. I'd love to connect with you on, common trends, what you're seeing, what the market's saying. Like, a lot of what I think is important for those that are either out of work or, are looking to jump into something new is having more informational. It's almost like an informational interview, but it's not an interview because it's with your network. But just have informational calls around what you're seeing within the market, what trends are in the industry, what you're going to need in order to jump back in if it's been a little bit. I think those are super helpful. And again, just engaging with people, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's in person or via Zoom right now, like, having the engagement with other people is going to keep you top of mind a lot of times too. And you don't always have to feel like you're asking for something, more so just talking with them, connecting, and, you're going to get something out of it technically just from having those conversations. They may go nowhere, or they may open up something down the road, 4 weeks, 10 weeks later. You never really know. So I always tell people, if they're looking, like, make sure that networking is a continued part of what you're doing day to day.
Yeah, that's a good segue, I think, to go off of like what your network is, right? Who is comprising your network? This is not just folks that you know professionally, but it's also your friends and family. Like, you never know who can open what door for you. So like alerting your close friends and your family that you're looking, maybe having them tell their network too, just to really expand your search. It doesn't have to just be on professional sites like LinkedIn or folks that you used to work with, although you should be tapping their shoulders too. But don't forget to talk to the people that are close to you.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the things that I've been fortunate. Like, most of, my career development has been through personal connections, whether it's, from college or, family or friends. Like, that's shaped how my career's developed so far. And, I'm super grateful for it, but it's something that I feel like a lot of people are a little fearful of, that they don't want to look like they don't want to be looked down upon because they don't have a job, or they are asking for help. Right now, don't do that. Just talk to people. Like, we're in weird times, weird, situations across the board.
Unprecedented.
I was trying to say other things.
I know.
It's not unique right now to be in this situation. So, have those upfront conversations, make sure that you talk to people and lean on your network a bit, and people are doing it all over, and to not do it, I think, is doing yourself a disservice.
Good point. I just want to say really quickly, we have some questions coming in. We'll get to those.
I can see them. Nice.
I know. We're getting some good engagement here. We'll get to those in just a little bit. So if you're someone that's asked a question that we haven't responded to yet, hang in there. We'll circle back on all of these. What else is important, Matt? Keep us going.
Keep us going. The other thing, and we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but just do your research. It's right now, I mean, it's really important to know, a lot about the organizations that you're applying for. Too often are companies or recruiting agencies going to see, one person apply to all 10 jobs on their job board. Like, that is a bit of a red flag for people. So make sure that when you're applying for jobs, that you've done a little bit of research on what they're looking for and that the skills are relevant. Obviously, not every person's going to be 100% of a fit for every role, and most hiring teams and talent acquisition professionals should know that. But you want to always be putting your best foot forward, and making sure that you're researching, specifics for that particular role, that particular industry, even that particular company. And if it's been a little while and some of those skills might be a little stale, then obviously it's making sure that you're building yourself to showcase the skills that are going to be relevant with good examples from your past. So, I always tell people to focus on, targeting specific roles first, to understand what they really want to do, and then focus on the industry or the companies as well. People can do it in whatever order they want if they're more, focused on an industry, but it really helps them kind of hammer in on what they want to be doing and the right companies that are going to be a fit for them, so that they're not just jumping in to find something. Because, at the end of the day, you want this next fit to be the right fit, not just, something that you're there for 6 months and then you're in the same situation again later.
Right. Yeah. Good point. So in regards to this kind of like research piece and coming up with target roles and target companies, at Careerwell, we created a target companies list that can help keep you super organized. For now, it is a free download, so feel free to go download that and use it. I'll link it in the comments below as well. But I think it's a good idea to really stay organized when you're going about your job search. It's important to recognize that this is your full-time job until you find a job. So the same type of professionalism and organization and hard work that you're putting in when you are in a position should be going into helping you restart your career too.
I didn't just plug that because you and Don helped put it together, but it definitely helped. So,
Right.
Going off of that too, don't forget to look. Like, one of the things that I know James has talked about is if you're looking at a particular title or position, look at 4 or 5 job descriptions for that particular title or that role, and make sure that your resume can reflect some of those skills that are commonalities across each of the roles. I think doing kind of a keyword search and making sure that piece is there too, is going to be helpful, so that recruiters can find you on LinkedIn or on Indeed or the different sites that you're on, or just to match to the job description that you're working on. Going back to something I know I've touched on before, like, it has to be relevant. Like, don't lie, don't throw stuff in there. It'll get found out pretty quickly. A lot more lately have I found hiring managers I'm working with that will dive in on a particular skill set from a year or two ago just to say, hey, like, do you really have this? Is this something that you just kind of threw in there because I know it's in our job description? And I think it's smart on both sides. One, make sure it's in there if you can do it and can speak to it. But on the flip side, from a hiring manager perspective, you can catch a lot of the BS pretty quickly.
Yeah, good point.
So I think that's important. And then, honestly, around, getting back in front of people, the other thing that you can do after you've researched, after you've built yourself up, is like, just practice. And practice can be knowing your pitch and being able to live it and being able to speak to it no matter what. It could be having interview questions that you've been asked or you think you might get asked and have answers to them right away. I think the worst thing you could do in an interview setting is to stumble on a question that you have the answer to. You just can't think of it. It hasn't been something that you've talked about for a little while. So you stumble and it looks like you just don't know. You just don't know what you're saying. And that you could have the right experience and the right answer for it, but in stumbling through it makes you look bad. And that's the last thing you want to do. So you want to be able to be articulate and be able to talk to that experience. And then with a lot of interviews happening like this right now, be able to, practice it, film yourself doing an interview with a friend or a family member. Just do it by yourself. I can't tell you how many LinkedIn videos I've done where I've had 15 different versions of it on my phone before
those are the days.
But it's important, and you want to know, like, how you look. You want to know how you come off, your mannerisms, like what to do with your hands on on an interview. Like, all of these things are super important when interviewing in person. They're just as important when you're interviewing via Zoom. And again, that it's going to come down to your environment and the individual, and being able to see yourself on the screen while also talking to the other person. And it's different. It's not something that the people are used to. And on the flip side, hiring managers aren't used to it either. So, having that understanding on both sides is helpful. So the more practice you can have, whether it's, via phone conversations, practicing your pitch, practicing your background, or actually doing interviews and walking through things with people, it's important. And I've talked to plenty of hiring managers and candidates alike that 6 months ago, they didn't know how to interview. They didn't know how to talk to people. They're like, well, I can't hire people over Zoom. Like, I'm not gonna be able to get to know them. And now, they feel like they're pros at it, whether that's a good thing or not.
Right.
We're in a different situation now. So again, if you haven't done a ton of interviewing, like that's a way to kind of catch up to some of the others that have had to do this.
Yeah, great. So I want to go back to some of the questions that we were asked and see if we can give some folks some answers. So bear with me as I scroll through some of these. We had Shane ask, is it a good idea for candidates to apply for roles that they are 100% qualified for based off their experience, but also roles that may be a step below where they were previously? It seems most companies have a pick of the litter during these times. So being somewhat overqualified for positions may be a good idea. Thoughts on this strategy?
It's a hard question to answer, because a lot of times having the pick of the litter, those people that are maybe overqualified, that are getting these calls, ultimately are probably having these interviews, and maybe they even get an offer, but they also don't necessarily want to take a step back from where they were. So it's a very highly personal decision. It's
Yeah.
very difficult to answer on behalf of everybody. I will say for those that are looking to pivot or to get into something new or to jump back into something, it is always a good idea to do that as well, to have some options on the table. Because you never know what could happen. So being able to get your foot in the door here, show that value, and then 6 months later, you're at the level that you want to be at anyways. That's a logical way in. So yeah, I mean, I think it is a good idea, but it's got to be something that you understand is a pretty personal decision. And if you're willing to go through 4 rounds of interview for a role that might be a level below, and you have to understand it's a level below, so don't be upset if they present you with an offer that might be a level below what you're targeting too. Like, it's just really setting clear expectations up front, both from a candidate and a client perspective, and understanding if you're going after somebody that's clearly overqualified, there's probably other companies that are either A, doing that as well, or B, are interviewing them for roles that they're perfectly qualified for, that may have priority over you. So as a client, you need to have that expectation as well, that while you want person A for role A, there's going to be a lot of other people that are looking at person A too right now. So you want to come in with a good offer too. Like, there's clients that we work with that I think have done a really good job in understanding that this isn't the time to lowball people. This is the time to get the right talent that might be available because of situations, and get it and keep it, and take it, and it's yours now. Like, this is now somebody that you maybe wouldn't have been able to get because they were happy in their other position, to help you build and grow and scale your team. And you don't want to do yourself and your company a disservice in lowballing them if you know that they're worth what they're worth, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does. And I think when looking at this year and even into next year, there's just so much uncertainty, right? We're not sure how long this is going to last. We have no idea what the market's going to look like in the coming months, although we wish we did. So I think that, like Matt said, it is a really personal decision. If you have to make ends meet and take something that was a step below where you were at, or maybe a few step belows where you were at previously, then that's a decision that you have to come to, and something you have to decide on your own. If you're comfortable with that, if it makes sense for yourself, for your family, whatever the situation may be, then absolutely do it. We're not telling folks to hang on for a year or 2 years before the right role comes up. And I think during times like we're experiencing now, where we just don't really have the answers on how long this will last, if it makes sense for you to do that, then it's probably a good idea.
And going back to the first point, like, own it. It's part of your story, and be able to talk to it. Most people in talent acquisition, especially with companies that are agencies, like, nobody wants you to feel like you're taking a step back or taking less money. Like, companies don't want you to feel like you're doing that. Recruiters don't want you to feel like you're doing that. So it's never a goal. And if it is a goal, probably steer clear of those companies and recruiters.
Yeah, for sure.
But just own it and say, I took this role because I thought it would open up doors for growth and get me back in the right spot, and it's got to be the right decision for you, like, at the end of the day. So Shane, yeah, I'd say it's still a good idea, because you want to cast a wide enough net where you're still getting bites, but you still want to make sure that you're transparent with the client that you're interviewing for, or with the recruiter that you're working with, on what you'd actually take in terms of an offer if it gets far enough down that path.
Great. So Giselle asked a question, for someone who is not that good at speaking English, how do you think this person can sell him or herself at the interview?
That's a good question. And obviously that's very specific to the types of roles that they're looking at. So if that is something that you feel is an obstacle for yourself to overcome, that's when I would come to an interview over prepared.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be with clear examples of the work that I've done that I can share with the team that says, like, you want me to deliver X, Y, and Z. Here's where I've done that before. Here's the value it adds. Things like that, showcasing more of the examples that maybe you're not as easily able to articulate. And I think that's important. If it's a software engineer that has some code examples they can share, fantastic. If it's an HR professional that's established processes and structures, bring that example to the table because it showcases what you've done and where it's relevant. So I think it's obviously going to be particular to the types of roles that you're interviewing for, but be more if that that's a shortcoming that you feel like you have or an obstacle that you think might be difficult to overcome, over prepare in other areas, and again just kind of own it and see if there's any concerns or questions that they have, and if it is, ask them about it and see if there's other areas that you can showcase your skills and have those frank conversations. If it's with a recruiter, ask them where they can what would be beneficial for them to add more information. If it's for a client that you're interviewing for, say, hey, like I'm happy to share more information about what I can do, just so that this isn't a bias that would work against me.
I hate to plug this twice in one podcast, but I'm going to do it. So this is where I think it's really important to be a data-driven storyteller. Numbers are pretty universal. So if you're able to put some type of data in regards to your resume, in regards to the things that you're sharing, that's going to be a language that most people speak and can understand. So if you feel maybe a little uncomfortable with your English speaking capabilities, and maybe it's easier to talk about the data or the projects that you've done in that way, I think that could be a really great way to help move things along in that process.
Every business stakeholder, every executive speaks money. If you can add value, if you can add to the bottom line, if you can share examples of where you can increase revenue, increase performance, that's what they want to hear. I mean, if they want to hire you so that you can make them more money, at the end of the day. And as a CEO, you want to bring in a team that's going to be driving things for you, and you want to bring in the best people, and being able to showcase where you've delivered that, I think is one of the most important things you can bring to any interview, whether that's examples you're articulating or you have in hand to show them.
I think that wraps up the questions that we received. So Matt, do you have anything else you want to share, and do you think we can wrap things up for the day?
I think right now, again, it just really comes down to people kind of understanding that their situation, as unique as it may feel, isn't always the most unique, and just being pretty upfront and kind of honest and transparent about where they're at and where they want to go, I think is important. So, kind of highlighting, building up yourself, researching and making sure that you're looking at the right things, and then, practicing and being able to kind of, speak to it, I think is important. So, putting your best foot forward is going to be about, how you as an individual can can take that step and deliver in the role or the organization that you're looking to jump into. So having those examples, I think, is helpful. And like I say it to a lot of people, like, don't be too proud to ask for help or to talk to other people about it. The more frank conversations we can have about the situations that some of us are in right now, the less awkward they get, and the more mainstream they get, and the more people are helping each other.
Mm-hmm. Good point. So we know that reentering the workforce is no easy task, whether it's been a little bit of time or a lot. So hopefully the points that Matt shared today were helpful for folks. If you have any other questions or want to talk to either of us in a little more detail, please feel free to reach out. We're both happy to chat one-on-one. And I would also like to plug Careerwell again. So for folks that are listening, please go to the Careerwell website. Right now we have all of our content for free. So you're getting our premium Learning Center tools. Feel free to check those out. I think we have some really really great resources that Matt highlighted in several of his points as well, whether it's targeting companies, building your resume, optimizing your LinkedIn, even negotiating your salary too. So check those out. I'll add the Careerwell website in the comments below. But Matt, thank you for today. I'm glad we were finally able to get this going and share your insight with Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, it's important for people to hear, whether it's the first time they've heard it or the 10th time they've heard it, that, there's a lot of stuff going on, and just kind of working towards it is the first thing you could do. So
great.
Hopefully somebody got something out of it. That's all I can ask for.
We answered a couple questions, so we did something right this time, I think.
Good. We had some good audience engagement. I like it.
We did. Well, thank you everybody that tuned in today. We were glad to have you. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to either of us, and we will see you all soon. Have a good rest of your week.
Take care.